virtual facilitation practice. We started doing these gatherings during the pandemic in the beginning to help lots of people recover from the heat and start doing stuff online. And we kept doing this. I think we did more than 30 already. And it's a pleasure to have people from all over the planet connecting, sharing, learning. So it's a safe space to learn and practice together.
I'm listening to a webinar at the same time.
It's only 90 minutes, so we'll fly. Remember to turn off your alerts and create a place to take notes, because usually we have some ideas, insights, and it's good to capture these ideas. And use the chat as much as you want. You can send private message for your colleagues, for me, for Jan, for anyone. And today, I'm delighted to have Jan with us. It's a very busy guy, very talented. Probably you know him from all his work that he's been doing in Canada and Germany. So an honor and a pleasure to have you, Jan. And the floor is yours, my friend. Take your time.
Thank you very much, Fernando. And thank you, Beth, for the little guided meditation at the beginning. It's actually a activity that I also love to do. I call it the 5 senses. And I think you added a 6th version in there, which was the shapes. And I really enjoyed that. So thank you for adding that. Before we started, we had some technical issues. And I'm now realizing I have another technical issue I need to fix before I can start the session. And I told Fernando, one of the things that I've learned from running, like, I think more than a dozen virtual facilitator trainings is things will go wrong, we just don't know when. And the real thing to learn and to practice is how do you deal with it when things don't go the way you planned. And I'll actually start with this story while I try to get my slides back up. There was one moment where I was in the middle of the session, and actually somebody also did a guided meditation that was called the fire breath. And while she was doing this activation for everyone, my fire alarm in my building went off. And I was like, okay, this is too much of a coincidence, but with the fire alarm in a condo building going off, I don't know how long it's going to take before it's over. It was so loud, like I could not talk to my students, and basically had to use a quick break in between the fire alarm to tell them, okay, I have the fire alarm going off in my building. We need to improvise. Everybody go to a breakout room. I'll open up some breakout rooms, have a conversation in small groups, just discuss anything we've covered in the last half hour and any insights you've taken from it. Send people to breakout rooms. Luckily, within like 5-6 minutes, the fire alarm was taken care of. And when people came back, we could continue the session. And I really felt like I had let people down. But they later said, no, this was like the best lesson. You were like calm. You just kind of figured out a plan B. You assured us that you're going to take care of it. And we actually got so much more out of that little break of doing a debrief with each other than we might have had from you continuing to talk or giving us more content. So I'll keep that in mind with kind of the challenge I'm having right now. But let's see, let me open it up back again, and then we can start this session talking about icebreakers and ice melters. And I'll explain in a little bit what that actually means. That's interesting. My Keynote app does not want to respond right now. Let's try this one more time. It seems like this is the first time it's actually not working. So I'll go off memory because I know the first few things that I want to share with you. There will be a breakout room, and I will use that time to fix that. And then we'll have like the visual effects that come with it. But the first question I wanted to ask you, if you could go to the chat and just let me know, when you hear the words as a participant, let's start with an icebreaker. How do you feel? Just type in a couple feeling words into the chat. Okay, I'm hearing cringe. Oh no, anxious, Ew. Oh, here we go. I hope that I got the intonation right on all of those comments. Ugh. Curious. Usually, apprehensive. Excited. Right. So I love that we're not getting all negative words in here. There's also some positives, because if I think of my relationship to icebreakers, it is that kind of love-hate relationship. When I grew up, I used to be a very shy kid. I probably was the person that was in your class and you never even knew when you met me on the street that I was in your class, because I never raised my hand, because I just did not have the confidence to speak up and be the center of attention if everybody look at me. So doing an icebreaker activity where you have to make a fool out of yourself and you have to play this silly game in front of everyone is not where I would say I'm in my comfort zone. But if I look at it on the other end of the spectrum, I also love having deep conversations with people. I am not a fan of small talk, and if there's anything that a leader, a facilitator, a trainer can do to help me get to know someone and get to the deep conversations faster and skip that whole how's the weather and what do you do for work and all of those kind of questions that are a little bit of a dead end, they don't really go anywhere, then I actually appreciate the invitation to break the ice, to get to know someone faster. So I want you to reflect on your own relationship to icebreakers. You already shared a word or two in the chat, but maybe is it also a kind of actually think about it. If icebreakers were a person and you had to describe that relationship, like, is it a relationship with an ex-lover that you broke up, but you still see each other every once in a while? Or are you like best friends forever, like you love them? Or is it something you have to keep secret, like you love icebreakers, but you don't really want to talk about it with others? So use that metaphor in any way you see fit. I'll open up some breakout rooms. I think we're going to do groups of 2 or 3. And then I'll give you 6 minutes to discuss. And when we come back, I would love to maybe hear 1 or 2 of those stories. Does that make sense? Give me a quick head nod or a thumbs up. Amazing. Okay. I will open up the breakout rooms. It looks like the math works out that there's exactly 3 people in each room. I'll share the instructions one more time. So if icebreakers were a person, what would the relationship be like? Okay, fixing my spelling mistakes. And lastly, if you still have your camera off and you are able to turn it on, I would love if you turn that on right the moment when you get to your breakout room, so the other person is not sitting in the dark. All right, I will see you in a couple of minutes. Hey, welcome back. First few people have made it. Give me a quick thumbs up if you had a good conversation, you met somebody new or interesting. Catching up with somebody that you already know, amazing. The good news is I think my tech is working again, but I'm actually more interested to hear if anybody here has a story about the relationship with icebreakers, and maybe it even has shifted from kind of when you started out your work as a facilitator to now. If you do want to share, raise your hand so we can make sure that we can unmute you. Or if you want to share it in the chat, that's also an option. Let's see. This is, by the way, usually one of those moments where I queue up my little cricket that I didn't get to introduce to you earlier. My little cricket always comes out when I ask a question. Nobody's ready to raise their hand yet. So please say hello to my little friend. And while he's hopping through the screen, getting hit by that tumbleweed, I see we have 2 hands going up. Amazing. That's exactly what this was meant to do. Give you some extra time. Nora, go ahead. I would love to hear what's your relationship like?
Great, thank you. And we loved the question. And I'm just going to acknowledge that it was a discussion with our group, so not just me, but this notion of some cautiousness around, will this be a friend that is an inclusive friend, aware of kind of all the perspectives? Or is this a friend that I should be careful because they're not aware and it won't feel like it's a welcoming, warm conversation?
Ooh, that hits me really hard because I feel like I'm thinking of people in my life that I have that relationship with, especially when you don't know them that well yet. Thank you for sharing that, Nora. And then I think I see Iwona. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yeah, Ivana, hi, Jan.
Ivona, there we go.
Well, we had a really good conversation, very quick one, about what you just said. And initially, there was a lot of resentment around using icebreakers. However, myself as a facilitator, I really love using icebreakers. I think they are really necessary, but there were some challenges in using icebreakers. And, and one of them, and I think we all agreed to that, is just to really understand where your team is at. So, for example, which is not always easy to break into by having conversations with your stakeholders. But for example, it's a different thing if you just get individuals who come together and they ask to work together, but they actually haven't got a clue about each other. I think then is a more need to actually spend some time together. And it's different if you actually have well-performing team and they really here for 1 hour to make a decision, and then you're dragging them to do some icebreakers and 2 lies and 1 truth, and so it can be seen as waste of time.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. At least that's also my experience. And you're already mentioning one really important thing that we'll talk about later today, which is knowing your audience, knowing your participants is really crucial in figuring out what activities to do, or if you're going to do any activities at all. So thank you, Ivona and Nora, for sharing, and everybody else for having a conversation in the breakout room. While you were away, I got my slides working again and just wanted to share, if we look at the definition of an icebreaker, it actually is not that bad. It's an activity or game designed to break down social barriers, make others feel more comfortable, and facilitate social interaction. So I think if I read that description, that doesn't sound too bad. But the thing is, when they're not done or facilitated in the right way, or we're picking the wrong activity for the wrong group, or it's just an activity that doesn't make people feel included, it could actually backfire and have the opposite effect. Like rather than breaking down social barriers, it could build barriers. It doesn't really make people feel comfortable, makes them feel uncomfortable. So what I want to explore today is this notion of what can we do to change it to the better. And my goal is that by the end of today, there's going to be 3 takeaways for you. Number 1, you'll know why icebreaker activities fail and what the impact is on the group, so you're more aware, you can avoid them. But also, we will talk about how to pick the perfect activity every time. I have like a step-by-step framework. So if you do run activities, how can you actually make sure that they have an impact on your group? And in the end, I also hope that you get just some new ideas for increasing engagement, building trust in your groups, and fostering deep connections. If that sounds like a good plan, give me a thumbs up if you have your camera on, or type a yay in the chat, whichever you prefer, because the best way I realized to have people experience what an icebreaker feels like, especially the ones that I try to erase from my tool belt, is to actually do one. So quick pop quiz question. I actually went to Google and did a little bit of research. I typed in, what's the best icebreaker activity? Without now going to Google, can you go to the chat and think and guess which were the top results? Which activities came up? And I went through the top 10 search results and I added all of the activities up, and there was one activity that was on 8 of the 9 lists. Like almost every search result, of course, was a here's your top 10 icebreakers, here's your top 100 icebreaker activities for new teams, here's your top so and so. All right, I see 2 truths and 1 lie, or 2 lies and 1 truth. Shows up quite a few times. Introducing your name, share your favorite, fill in the blank, right? I think you might have done this research yourself. The top 3 were actually 2 truths and 1 lie. 8 out of 10 search results had that one. Name and a fun fact, I think about half, 5 of the 10. And then never have I ever was mentioned twice. Everything else was like different on each list. All 3 of those activities I have seen facilitated so badly that they did backfire. So I told you we want to make this interactive. We're going to play some icebreakers. We're going to pick the top 1, 2 truths and a lie. We'll play it, then debrief and see how we feel about it. Good? I will start by giving you 3 facts. If you've never played 2 truths and a lie, it's very simple. I will give you 3 facts. 2 of them are true and 1 of them is made up, and it's your goal to guess it. So when you think you've spotted the lie, I want you to share it in the chat by just typing A, B, or C. The first one is, I shared a coffee with the Colombian president. The second fact, I skydived on Christmas Day in New Zealand. Or the third fact, sorry, I'm covering this right now. I spoke at TEDx Toronto in 2018. So put in your guesses right now. Is it A, B, or C? Which one is the lie? Okay, I'm looking at the chat right now. B seems to take a lead. I did also see a couple of A's and a C. Now I'm not even sure anymore if it's A or B, but it definitely seems like A and B is the majority and there's only a handful of people saying C. So let's reveal. What is a fact is I did go skydiving on Christmas Day in New Zealand. This was already like 20 years ago. And you might not recognize me as I am upside down with wind blowing in my face. Second truth is I did have a coffee with the Colombian president when I was visiting. My family is from Colombia and they don't know the president, but he just showed up at the cafe I was hanging out during the carnival. So the lie was I did not speak at TEDx Toronto in 2018. I was part of TEDx Toronto 2018 and I spoke in TEDx Calgary 2020. So I just tried to mislead you a little bit with this one. Of course, that's what makes this game fun, trying to make you guess the wrong thing. So I'm going to pick maybe 1 or 2 people from the people who have the camera on, and we can just have your 3 facts. We'll play it through and then see how we feel. So let me see. Just want to pick a random person. Maybe... all right, we're just going to pause right now. I'm not going to pick anyone, but would love for you to, again, share in the chat how you're feeling right now. Just in this moment where maybe we're going to get picked. How did that feel? Okay, some people were all good, under pressure, don't pick me, uncomfortable, nervous. Mildly uncomfortable, not me, stressed, a little anxious, please not, and excited. I think I know why there are some people who are excited about this activity, because maybe you already have a couple of things prepared. But the truth is there's something about this activity, at least the way I facilitate it right now, that makes it not the greatest activity to start. Does anybody have a reason of why this activity might not be the best, the way it was facilitated right now? And you're welcome to share it in the chat, or I see Sherry is raising her hand.
Yeah, I think when people are put on the spot or expected to perform very quickly without some prep time, that really increases anxiety. So if you gave everybody 2 minutes to write down their 3 things and think about it, that might reduce the stress, I think. So they feel prepared. Because nobody wants to embarrass themselves, I guess, is the way people would feel if they feel they're not prepared.
Yes, you're 100% right. And like, I would also see myself as one of those people who are like, I did not have time to think of my 3 facts and I can't make them up on the spot. I'm not a good liar. So it's definitely anxiety producing. And one solution could be for this activity, if you decide to use it, give everyone a couple minutes to write down their 3 facts, or maybe even tell them that you're going to play this at the next meeting so they can prepare it on their time beforehand and be ready for it. Because there's actually, before I go to Mary, there's one other thing that happens when we don't give people time in this activity. And there were a lot of comments in the chat, so I'm not sure if anybody caught it. But while I was explaining my 3 facts and maybe telling one or the other story, if you were thinking about your facts that you're going to maybe share after, you weren't really listening to what I was saying either. So if the goal was, as the facilitator leading this, for you to learn more about each other, but you facilitate in a way where they can't really listen to each other, it's completely missing the point, right? Mary, do you have something else that...
Yeah, I was thinking too that for this audience, what would be appropriate? Because of the people that are here, because nobody knows me. And so that's where I was going, was what would be interesting and applicable to this audience.
Yeah, like this game, I think works much better if you already know the people and you have at least a little bit of a clue of what might be true. But with a stranger, I think somebody was even sharing that in the chat, you're like just completely guessing. You have no idea, right? So how can you actually find a winner in this game if it's so hard to even get something right? Is all just luck. Anything else that you wanted to share? Going through some of the comments in the chat. Beth says, didn't give any guidance to what types of things or facts might be used, right? And I think that also relates to the not safe for work facts. If you leave it completely open, you don't know what people will share. Giving some guidelines on what types of facts might be appropriate would be a good way. But also, I see Kimberly was saying presenter was so polished. I on purpose try to raise the bar quite high, so anybody who would go next has gonna have a lot of pressure to try to level up. So maybe the examples that I share should be rather mediocre and set the tone for what types of things I want other people to share. Megan, I can see your hand.
Yeah, Monica, I noticed Monica's comment in the chat as well. We were kind of on the same wavelength, that as a facilitator, we are demonstrating how to lie and be deceitful, and that's okay, and setting that tone. And that just feels very off for me from the jump.
Yes. Thank you for saying that, because that's maybe the one reason why I never really loved Two Truths and a Lie as a activity in the first place, because we're trying to build trust and we're rewarding the person who's the best liar. To me, those are like two opposites of what we want participants to do. Which is also the reason why I came up with a kind of my own version of this activity, where we do give people the time, but we're not really focusing so much on the lying aspect of it. I call this activity 2 wins and 1 wish. And I'll actually share with you how it works, but also if you are on my weekly email list, this is one of the first emails you get where I give you the whole instructions for this. I can share a link for that in the chat later. But the way it basically works is you're not trying to spot the lie. Like let's take out that competitive element of the activity and just make it about sharing some interesting facts about ourselves. And in this case, 2 wins, like 2 things you have accomplished, and 1 wish, 1 thing you hope to accomplish, let's say in the next year. And it's going to be, again, very crucial to pick things that are not like really ambitious, because then everybody will think, oh, I need to have a really ambitious win, a really ambitious wish that I want to accomplish, but maybe just some smaller things. Like, I don't know, maybe one of the wins is I got all the laundry done on the weekend, as like one thing that is a win for like half a day, and then it's too late. Then you have to start over again. But again, yeah, the examples really set the tone. And then the fun thing whenever I facilitate this is once people share something they want to accomplish, other people want to support them. And the focus of the conversations afterwards isn't about, ooh, what lie was the best, but how can I help you achieve your goal? And people start, having these conversations about mutual support, which to me is way more productive. Okay, I see, Nora, you had your hand up for a little bit. I'll come to you, and then I want to share with you one more activity that I think should be changed.
Yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to build on, so I love the wins and a wish, and it's building on Megan and Monica's comments too around the lie. And you've already shown an excellent sort of reframing of that. And Ray Ringel out of Washington, she does a similar 2 truths and an aspiration, which I think would generate the same kind of energy and supportiveness. And it's, it's just a simple respin, but I love the 2 wins and a wish. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so I hope that if your relationship with the icebreaker activities was like, oh, I'm not quite sure if I want to have a relationship with them or not, think of it this way, that we can change the activities that we've been doing and maybe make them more inclusive and more engaging for all participants. That's really what I'm hoping you'll take away from this today. And if you ever played the share your name and a fun fact, I think same thing. We want to make sure people have some time to think about them, and what makes a fun fact should be talked about and maybe some examples given. Because in my research, I came across this article that talks about 60 fun facts about me ideas to introduce yourself with. This is an actual website, a blog that I found. And I was quite disturbed when I found number 16, the most unusual or severe illness you've had, or 22, the amount of prepping you've done for the end of the world, or your strategy for the climate apocalypse. I don't think those are the fun facts that we talk about. So just defining what does it actually mean, fun for whom, is a good thing to keep in mind. But when you think about icebreakers, or when I think about icebreakers now, it really builds this visual of somebody taking a sledgehammer, trying to break the ice that all the participants are frozen in. And in that process, you might hurt people, you might break more than just the ice. It's also very violent. And to me, I can't get that visual out of my head anymore. So I started thinking about it and talking about this more as the process of melting the ice. Because when you melt the ice, and in my example with a campfire, it happens gradually, right? So it's not like this immediate action, because I also think we can't expect trust and engagement and like those social interactions to be built in like an instant. It's a process that takes time. So when I think about the activities that I choose and the things that I do, it just changes how I design my sessions from there. And I see Sherry likes to call your activities warmers or warm-ups. I actually, like, any word that you use is fine. I think the most important thing to keep in mind is the word icebreakers. If you use that term, it might already make some participants have all of the reactions that you had in the beginning, like, oh no, I wanna leave. So usually what I do is I don't say that we're doing an icebreaker. I just share why, like, what activity we're doing and how it's related to the session. And that way you could do a lot of the activities that you might already be doing and have a much better success rate, rather than saying, let's do an icebreaker. Nice. I like, Andrea, your I've not read the book Atomic Habits, but I'm familiar with the ice cube analogy. Yes, very similar. It's a process. It's not an instant action. Now, you might still be thinking, okay, did we now just change the name we're calling the activities? Is there some research that actually proves that melting the ice is better than breaking the ice? So I want to take some time talking about the psychology of melting the ice. And the reason why I have onions on the slide next to me is because of one popular movie. Let's see if anybody can guess that movie in the chat. A movie where there's one really iconic line about onions. And Beth has already posted the correct answer. It is Shrek. So what does Shrek have to do with onions? Who knows the line? Yes, I think if we combine the messages in the chat, ogres are like onions. Right, you need to peel the onion to get to the center. And I think onions have layers, ogres have layers, people have layers. And when you get to know someone, you really need to peel back the layers to get to know the person. But I think if we leave people on their own, they most likely will not get there. They will stick to small talk, surface level conversations. They'll talk about the weather. They'll talk about jobs and sports, and I don't know how bad the traffic was in getting to wherever they went, other trivial things, and it could take them years to actually build a close relationship. And I often think about this as the coworkers who might meet at the water cooler or the office kitchen every day and just do this chit chat. They put in a lot of time in their relationship, but I would argue they don't really know each other that well. So there is one study that I love that was made popular by this article in the New York Times, the 36 questions of how to fall in love. If you're familiar with that article, can you wave into the camera or let me know in the chat? So there's always, like, this article, it just makes its rounds. I feel like it gets shared in my circle of friends or different circles of friends every year. And these questions was actually based on research done by Arthur Aaron, but he did not research romantic relationships. He actually researched how peers build close relationships with each other. And I'll share with you the research that is a little bit complicated to understand, and then we'll kind of take it apart. So he says that one key pattern associated with the development of a close relationship among peers is sustained, escalating, reciprocal, personalistic self-disclosure. If you understood every word that I said right now, then you've probably heard this before and researched it. But when I read this the first time, I'm like, what are you talking about? In German, we have the saying that I only understand train station. Ich verstehe nur Bahnhof. Like, I have no idea what this actually means. So with your help, I would love to take this apart line by line and have you become the human thesaurus. And I apologize if the text is not completely in focus. I'll read it out whenever there is something important on the slide, so you're not going to miss anything. The first thing is sustained. If you could go to the chat and just type in what's a different way to say sustained. If we're thinking about two people, two peers building a close relationship. All right, we got ongoing, over time, recurring. Yes, exactly. It is more than once. It's repetitive. If you, again, think about building connections or building a close relationship the same way as building muscle in the gym, right? You're not expecting to go work out once, do a couple of sit-ups, and then have six-pack abs. You have to put in the time. You have to do it on an ongoing basis to see the results at the end. And we'll keep that in mind, because at the end we'll see how all of these things relate to designing sessions and icebreakers as well. But the one thing that I can share already is, or I even said earlier, it's naive to think that one single icebreaker activity can break down barriers, forge instant bonds, because that meaningful connection building and engagement, it evolves over time. Okay, next word, escalating. What's a different way to say escalating? Increasing, graduated approach, peeling back the onion, right? Layer after layer, going up step by step, rising, building up, getting stronger, lift up. Yes, those are all great words. And this is why I think the metaphor of building a fire is so much better than breaking the ice. Because for me, this is what you have to do when you build a campfire. You might have noticed my little campfire behind me. If I had a big log, which I do have a big log right here, and held a lighter under it, what would happen? If I wanted to build a big campfire, I should start with the biggest log I have, maybe even bigger than this, and just light that on fire. But what actually happens if I do this? Nothing. Right, this is way too big to catch fire from a lighter, or I would have to stand here for a really, really, really long time. Yes, what Monica says, I need something smaller, something that burns faster. I need tinder, I need kindling, I need little sticks, right? And once that small flame is burning, I put the next larger sticks on there, and then at the end I can put that big log on the fire. And to me, this is the idea. If you want to build close relationships, you need to make sure that you go deeper, that you don't just stay on the surface level. Okay, we are going to our third word, reciprocal. What's a different way to say reciprocal? Mutual, going both ways, two-way. Yes, exactly. Everyone participates. How would you apply this if your goal was to have two participants connect with each other in a session? What does reciprocal, how would you apply this? Let's see if there is some ideas in the chat. Both have to want to. Yes, Petra. Both have time to share, equal opportunity to contribute, right? So if you think about number one, we need to make sure that they communicate with each other. So doing something like a breakout room would be a good start, and then making sure that they both have time to share, and it's not just one person taking over the whole time, which I think is a thing that happens often, especially if we don't give clear instructions of how much time each person has, when they should switch, etc. Okay, and the last one is Personalistic self-disclosure. Let's see if it updates. What does personalistic self-disclosure mean? Personalistic self-disclosure, revealing, vulnerable, sharing yourself. Right, sharing vulnerable stories is what I wrote down. Again, we can't just have the conversations about the weather. We need to actually share something more meaningful about ourselves. But to me, this is the big log. This is not the thing that we start with. We need to make sure our participants are ready for it. So if we think of this whole quote or this whole research as instructions on how to melt the ice, we need to make sure that all of these things are present. So I turned this into a little bit of a checklist, but what I would love to do is invite you to connect with each other and see what specific tips you could take from this. And then we'll compare notes. Okay, so I'll actually share the whole sentence in the chat so you can read it there in a breakout room, and just give you the invitation to come up with maybe a little checklist of what a good ice melter activity, or even like a good designed session, a well-designed session, should include if your goal is to have people connect with each other. Okay, I'm gonna share this in the chat, and we will do again groups of 3 or 2. I think the math is 3 or 2. And I will give you 6 minutes for this again. So have a chat. Please make sure you introduce each other really briefly so you can spend more time talking about this question. And if you feel like, oh, I really want to get to know this person better because I just met them for the first time in a breakout room, make sure you exchange contact information and set up a one-on-one conversation. Because the one thing that I always realize about meeting people in breakout rooms, in virtual sessions, is there's never enough time. So even though I give you now 6 minutes, and if you do the math, it's about 2 minutes per person sharing, or at least having a conversation, it's still going to feel really quick. So if you do feel you want to connect with someone, make sure you exchange your details afterwards. For right now, give me a quick thumbs up if you're good to go. Amazing. I will see you in a couple minutes. Okay, Fernando, Nora, do you have any thoughts on how to implement some of this research?
Yeah, so I just thought it was a fantastic piece to ask a group, like very meaty. And the thing that's quite different, just based on what you've been talking about, is I didn't ever think of icebreakers as iterative and over time. So this gift of getting to have to work with the same group multiple times, and it's, even though there might be new people on the 3rd session because of job changes or whatever, but still that notion of we're gonna, as a group, peel back a layer. So that is such a powerful, yeah. So thank you for that, that research and the thoughtful prompt.
Yeah, it changed the mindset for one thing that you do at the beginning, and boom,
Yeah,
to something that we slowly and carefully builds upon the time.
yeah, yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, the interesting insight on that is very early I did run a workshop on icebreakers, and I designed the whole session, and then at the end I was like, oh man, I didn't even put an icebreaker in the session about icebreakers. And at the end I asked the participants, like did the ice break? Like, have we melted the ice, or like did everything that I said not make any sense because I didn't do one in the beginning? And they're like, no, this actually was way better. Yeah.
But it's moving it. Like, I think as a facilitator, you have your checklist of everything, okay, make sure your flip charts, make sure the coffee's hot. You've got like alternate non-dairy milk, like all the things. And so I'm just embarrassed to say, I would think of icebreaker. Okay, check, I did that. Now on to, like, now I'm going to get into what I'm here for. But I feel like you're elevating it from a checklist to a really intentional practice. So I love it.
It's an underlining process happening, right?
Yes. Yes, it's much more thoughtful and purposeful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like to use the word connection instead of icebreakers. And connection meaning you can connect yourself with the content or with another person or with anything. It's connection. And
Yeah.
we keep allowing space for people to connect along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, the most beautiful thing happens when you can do all of that at the in one session, maybe not at the same time, but like people connecting to themselves, to each other, to the content, to you as the facilitator, right? That's like another part that they need to trust you so they can feel like, okay, there's a person that supports us as a group.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And something else really powerful. Yeah, please, Fernando.
I was just remember one consultant, we were doing one exercise and the group we were working, but he asked us, can I ask the group how it was? Because it's important for me to be connected with them. Otherwise I can't move on. I said, okay. And then he spent like 5 minutes just doing like not a popcorn, but kind of a very subtle interview. And then I could see his face changing along the process. And okay, now I'm ready to move on. But it was clearly for him. So he was indulging himself in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. One other piece, Jan, that again is so powerful, and it was, I'm sure, intentional on your part, but it was like, wow, that was masterful, is getting us to think of our relationship with the word icebreaker and then inviting us to reframe it. It's like, yes, because we all had those visceral reactions because you know, like invited us to go there. So it just really embodied this kind of adult learning notion of experience. And so brilliant.
Nice. Thank you, Nora. And hello, everyone else. Welcome back. We were so deep in conversation, we didn't even realize that you're all back in the room with us already. But I'm going to invite you to go to the chat, and from your own little conversations you've had in the breakout room, what's an insight that you want to share? Just go to the chat right now and I'll give you a moment. What's an insight you want to share from your conversation? Interesting comments in the chat. Feel free to scroll back up after you posted your thoughts. Nice metaphors, keeping things easy. Definition of self-disclosure, finding commonalities, flexibility in the range of the depth the conversation can take. Nice. I'll leave you with a bit of a summary slide with some ways I apply this research in the trainings, the workshops, when I work with clients. The first thing, sustained, is probably the one that feels like, okay, if you see people only once, how are you actually going to do this, right? So sustained could mean people in the same breakout more than once. If you want two people to connect deeper, then give them the chance to not only see them each other once, but twice, or maybe even more. Then they're going to go deeper each time. You've probably had this experience if you go to attend an online session and you happen to be in the breakout room twice with the same person. Like, you're already best friends, you already know each other, you're kind of skipping all of the small talk introductions, and right away your conversation is going to go deeper. So think about, if this is your goal, how you could apply this, or if, of course, it's not just a one-off session, but a cohort that learns over time, or a group that you work with on an ongoing basis, that's going to be a lot easier. When we talk about escalating, like the campfire, start with something that is very low risk. Ideally, something that everyone can participate easily without having to step too far outside of their comfort zone. And then gradually, we're going to kind of invite them to take further steps, knowing that everybody's speed is going to be different. I like to think of this also, if we're building a campfire at the same time with everyone, we need to make sure that the slower people will pick them up, and maybe the faster people who are more comfortable with sharing and being vulnerable will kind of hold them back a little bit, because if the group is moving at the same speed, they'll connect a lot better. When it comes to being reciprocal, number one, setting the tone by sharing first and modeling what your participants to do is really important. Because I think when we chatted about this earlier, reciprocal, you were thinking about participant to participant, but you're also a person in the room or on Zoom that people need to connect with. So if you want to connect with your participants, you also need to be sharing some stories. You also, if you want them to be vulnerable, you need to be vulnerable as well. Kind of open up the door for everyone else. And of course, when it comes to personalistic self-disclosure, I like to phrase it as encouraging storytelling, because whenever we're telling stories rather than just facts, by default, people become like, it gets a little bit more vulnerable, and it needs to be an invitation. We can't force people to share something that they're not ready to do. Vulnerability, again, same thing with people's comfort zones. What's vulnerable for one person might not be vulnerable for another person. So we need to move in this territory with a lot of caution, and always need to be checking in with our groups as well. Talking about checking in, I feel like I want to check in with this group and ask how you're doing right now, because there's still one thing that I want to share in the next 15 minutes, which is how to pick the perfect activity. But before I do this, I need to load up the slide again. I'll click through this. I would love for you to just share a number from 1 to 10 in the chat of how you're feeling right now about this content. Oh, let me put the last one on there too. All right, thank you, Monica, for starting us off. Got an 8s and 9s. And knowing that there might be a lower number coming at one point, I'm going to invite everyone to do one stretch that makes your body feel a little bit better, whatever that stretch is for you. So that might be arms above your head or behind your back, or leaning to one side or the other, maybe stretching your legs, whatever it is to move a little bit. I also read movement in the chat earlier, so that was a good reminder for myself. Sitting in front of a screen can be tiring. Before we jump into this last topic, how to pick the perfect activity. And I'm saying perfect with, like, I should be putting air quotes. In another workshop, somebody was saying, "Ooh, this is like the one ice melter activity to rule them all. If you know that one activity, then all your problems are gone. You can just reuse that every single time." Unfortunately, that's not the case. The perfect activity is going to look different on a lot of different things based on 3 steps that we're going to go through. Research your blank, align your blank, and adjust for blank. I'm going to have you guess what each of them are as we're going to go through it, starting with the first one we've already talked about at the very beginning. So what should you research before you pick just any activity? Let me know in the chat. And if you remember, somebody mentioned it in like the very beginning. Yes, people, audience, participants, group. You want to research your group, because the more you know about them, the better you can choose an activity that will resonate with them and that makes them buy in. And there's 3 things that I think about. 1, 2, 3. not going to have you guess, but I'm going to reveal them. The first one is location. Like, is this a session where everybody's going to be in person? Is everybody going to be on Zoom, on Microsoft Teams? Or is it some kind of hybrid scenario where there's everybody in the room except one person who's calling in? Or everybody in front of a computer for themselves except two people who share one, right? That's really important to know, because if one person can't participate, then whatever activity I'm going to do is make them feel excluded from the group. The second thing is one that I love having conversations about with my clients before I work with them, which is familiarity. How well do people know each other? Are they complete strangers? Or are they best friends, soulmates, like on the other end of the spectrum, right? Like all three of them is a bit of a spectrum. If people don't know each other, going to do different activities than if they've been working together for an ongoing basis. And the last one is playfulness. Like, how open are they to doing something rather silly on one end versus being serious all the time on the other end? I also, when I work with clients and the person who's hiring me, I love to ask that question, because they might not have ever thought about this before, and they always struggle a bit answering, but then very quickly they will tell me, oh, they're mostly serious. Like, we normally don't do games and icebreakers, right? Like, I compare this sometimes between, let's say, people who meet in a boardroom all dressed in suits and like business attire on one end versus maybe a youth theater group that is already doing lots of things that are way outside of the comfort zone for most people. So think about where is your group on the spectrum will help you pick the right activity. And the second thing we're going to do is align to your what? Goals, objectives. Yes, I think you're right. I said align to your session, but I might as well say align to your session's goals or your session's objectives. Because to me, there's one thing that is the overarching kind of theme of the session and the overarching outcome that you want to reach and the reason why you're gathering people. But then each activity also has a different purpose. So if I think of the icebreaker activity traditionally in the beginning might have one specific purpose, but if that is not clear how that's related to the larger session, that's where you get those comments of, oh, this is a waste of time. We're just like, how is this random silly game connected to, I don't know, this brainstorming session, right? So the more you can connect those two, the more you're going to get buy-in. And the last thing is adapt for, let's see what we're going to adapt to. Surprises. Ooh, I like this. Challenges, the unexpected. Now I feel like I want to add this to my slide. Differences. I had a hard time naming this, and I actually just changed the name of this. So I'm kind of taking some of your guesses from the chat, and maybe I'll change it. I now change it to adapt for requirements. And what I mean by requirements is things like your group size, the time that you have, the size of the space. Are there any accessibility needs you should be aware of based on the participants? Like, it's connected back to the first thing of knowing who your audience is or who your participants are. If there is someone, and I recently had a session, a whole training cohort where one person joined who was blind, I needed to make sure that any activity that I do, I adjust. I'm aware of that. And interestingly enough, similar to the activity that Beth did at the very beginning, I did a 5 senses activity, and I needed to ensure that a blind person can participate, because I can't say, okay, look around your room and find 5 objects that you can see, right? So I needed to adjust for that, and that's kind of the last step that I always like to do. Normally at this point, I would love to pause and have us brainstorm some specific activities based on what sessions you might have coming up. But because we're a little bit short of time, I'm going to show you one slide with a bunch of activity names on it, and just have you put in the chat, and I'll quickly share some of my favorite activities that are all linked to a specific outcome, but they also fit on this spectrum of how well do people know each other. Like strangers are at the bottom, friends are at the top, and how playful are they, from serious on the left to silly on the right. First of all, let me know if you can read the text, because I know it's quite small. Okay, I'm seeing shaking heads. I'm going to read them out because I don't think I have them ready to be copy pasted, but I'll read them out. The pink ones, leave it at the door and pick an image. The bottom left, the yellow ones, alternate intro and samesies. The kind of I want to say skin color. Also, I'm like colorblind a little bit. Dog, cat, mouse, and spectrum, and then the kind of greenish on the top right, puzzle, challenge, and yes, dinner. If any of those were like, ooh, I'm curious what this is, type something in the chat, and I'll pick two to explain. So at least you have some activities that you can start using. Okay, I see leave it at the door and yes, dinner. So we'll go through those two, and I'll tell you what they are for. So leave it at the door. The times I would use them is if I have a session around managing conflict or building trust. Building trust, I feel like, is part of every group that is kind of coming together that doesn't know each other that well yet. But leave it at the door is basically an invitation to leave baggage behind, like leave all the things that we don't need for our session at the door. So I would invite participants to take a few minutes at the beginning of the session, maybe take a Post-it or a piece of paper, write down any assumptions, grudges, personal baggage that they're carrying into the meeting that might hinder a productive dialogue. So again, if you're like managing conflict, that would be like the ideal scenario for this. And emphasize that this is an opportunity that like they can write something that is private. This is not going to be shared with anyone. You collect everybody's notes, you place them in a bin and put it outside the door. Like now we physically moved all of these things outside the door. We symbolically left that baggage outside. And then, this is my favorite part of this, you invite them to do the same thing again, but then set positive intentions. Like, so what you're actually bringing to this conversation. Do the same thing again. And in this case, I would say it depends on the group. You could collect them all, shuffle them around, make it anonymous, and then read out a few or read out all of them if it's a smaller group. Or if you think the people would be comfortable, they could also read them out and say, here's the things that I'm bringing into the space. So we left the negative things outside, don't really talk about it, but we focus on what's the positive that we want to bring in. And I think that's a beautiful activity before, if you expect there to be a challenging conversation in the room with the people. And what was the other one? Yes, dinner. Actually curious if anybody here is part of the Applied Improv network or a applied improviser. Nobody here. Oh, Bruce, nice. So applied improv is basically improv theater, but you're applying it to professional and personal development. So it's an improv exercise, but it doesn't really feel that way. And same thing as with icebreakers, I probably wouldn't say, hey, let's do an improv exercise, because people already will start go like, oh no, now I have to act and I have to be on the stage. So this, interestingly enough, also good for managing conflict, also good for solving problems and making decisions. And this is also an activity that works in person, works virtual. The basic idea is the group, or if you have a larger group, I would put them in smaller groups of maybe 3 to 5 people. Their goal is to come up with ideas for the perfect dinner party. And in the first round of this activity, every new idea will be shut down with no. One idea might be, oh, let's order some Thai food. No. What about if we put candles on the table? No. Let them do the whole thing. Debrief quickly how it felt. Round 2, this time every idea is met with yeah, but, and then you fill in the sentence. We want to order Thai food. Yeah, but not everybody likes Thai food. Oh, we want to put candles on the dinner, but yeah, but that might be a fire hazard. Again, debrief. And then in the third round, each idea is going to be responded to with yes and. We should order Thai food. Yes, and we should have custom chopsticks for everyone to eat. We should have candles on the dinner. Yes, and maybe also some nice flowers so it smells nice. Or maybe the candles should be scented candles. And then debrief after each round. People will usually realize in the first round where every idea gets shut down, nothing is really happening. You're not making any progress. With the yeah, but, it's like, it's polite, but it's still a no. Like you're not getting anything done. Although people say yes, the but kind of cancels that out. And then in the last round, of course, there's momentum, there's collaboration, you come up with new ideas. People will realize that when we want to brainstorm, like this is also great before brainstorming, saying yes and building on each other's ideas will get us to a completely different endpoint than saying yeah, but, or shutting ideas down right from the beginning. And Kimberly is asking if it's the same ideas each round. That's totally up to each group. Like they normally come up with new ones, or they could reuse the same ones. It's kind of like popcorn style. Whoever has an idea shouts it out, and then it gets responded by someone else in the group. Yeah, so those are 2 of the activities. Like I said at the beginning, if you want more of the activities, I didn't say this, I am writing a book about ice melters. So a lot of the research and the things that I shared today are going to be in the book. I am not sure when it's going to be released, but I want to say I'm like halfway done the first draft, and I have the first beta readers giving me feedback. So if you do want to connect with me on that, if you want to be a beta reader or just read some of the content, I'll leave a link in the chat and give the last couple minutes back to Fernando, because I still have one question, but I'm not sure if there's anything important that Fernando wants to say before I close.
No, I have nothing. Usually it's good to ask people what they are getting from this session, just to have a sense. So maybe you can write in the chat. Let's do it like this. I'll put in the chat the invitation for the chat storm. So write what are your takeaways from this session, this meeting, but don't hit enter, just write it. And when you're done, you just show your hands in the camera to let me know that you are done, and also put some peer pressure on.
I like it. I had something similar ready in case you didn't post this.
Yeah, one guy told me every system in nature needs a little bit of pressure to be working. So a little bit of pressure, not much. Yeah, Isabel, let's use like that as well, closer to the camera and away from the camera. See, we can change the pressure. Let's see it again. Who is done? Just okay. Some more seconds. And let's count down. 3, 2, 1, and go. And now it's your turn, Jan, to read and close.
Yes. Oh, there's going to be there's a lot that I will be I'll be taking that chat home with me to read all in detail. Explicit steps to design experience, multiple opportunities for relationship building, fresh perspective on icebreakers, more possibilities, fun and new ideas, feeling energized. Amazing. All right, because we have still 3 minutes, I would love to close with a little experiment, but I need to know if you're up for an experiment. So if you're up for an experiment, can you just show me one finger into the camera? We're going to use the index finger or not the thumb, not a thumbs up. Okay, I think I have enough buy-in to try this. I need to also prepare something really quickly. Okay, that is ready to go. So show me that finger again, one more time. Okay, just wiggle it so I know that it's working. If you have a second finger, you're invited to add a second finger. Just wiggle that too. Okay, that's working too. Very good. I'm going to be playing some music, and I just want you to the best of your abilities, move your fingers to the rhythm of the music. Okay, whatever that means to you. Okay, got my fingers ready. Very good. And maybe you're doing like windshield wipers like me. Maybe they're like pointing at different things. Maybe they're spinning. Whatever works for you. Okay, let's get our wrists a little bit loosened up as well. How about our elbows as well? And our head starts moving to the beat a little bit. And give yourselves a big round of applause because you just participated in the world's shortest finger disco. And because I want to leave you with something, hopefully, that sticks with you, my question is, why did I just end with this? Go to the chat. Why do you think I just ended with this little activity? Also learning that this is Mexican for yes. Okay, high energy, fun energy, we smiled. Upbeat community building. Okay, I think there's one thing that we might have missed, and I'll go by sharing my example. If somebody tells me, I'm joining a Zoom call, hey everyone, we're gonna, while we wait for everybody to get here, we're gonna get up from our desk, we're gonna have a little dance party on Zoom. I would be the first person to turn my camera off and disappear. I don't know if any of you are kind of similar around dancing in public or dancing on Zoom, but I think this was a little bit different. Why? What was the difference? Okay, I'm seeing safe, invitation, low risk, inclusion, made it doable. People are following instructions. My finger can dance better. Scale. Yes. Like I almost want to bring back the quote. We were escalating. We started with a finger. We wiggled a finger. We added another finger. We loosened our wrists. We added the elbows. We were just doing it so gradually that hopefully it was easy for you to get to the next step rather than me saying, okay, everyone, let's have a dance party, which is me trying to light that big log. Of course, this is also a lot easier to do at the end of the session where we've already built a bit of a relationship. I would not start a session with this with complete strangers, but I wanted to thank you for being open to it, for participating in this experiment, and yeah, really hope that you stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jan. Thank you guys for coming. See you in the next opportunity.